Good morning. It's 10 o'clock, and we do have a quorum. Even though I know we're not all here, I would like to get started. For some, this might be a surprise to see me starting the meeting, but as is the process at the beginning of every year, we have to conduct an election for chair and vice chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee. And until we do that, I am going to open the meeting and move things forward. So I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the ACRD, and Daniel Sayal. And I want to call the meeting to order. I want to start by recognizing that we are hosting this meeting across a number of territories within our region, specifically hosting here on the Tishat and Petchsit First Nations. And we certainly not only recognize but appreciate the fact that we can live, work, and play in these territories. And I ask that everyone give that some thought in their own way as we move forward. A notice to participants: this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, and this is a direct link on our regional district website. So I will now turn the meeting over to the General Manager of Administrative Services to conduct the election of chair and vice chair for the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to do a quick overview as we are now doing meetings by hybrid. If there is an election, I'm going to ask directors to email me their vote, and I'll provide my email address, and of course it will be held in strict confidence. So I will begin the process. So I'm going to call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022 a first time. Director Shannon?
Thanks. I will nominate Director Cote.
Director Cote, do you accept that nomination?
Okay, I will.
Great, thank you. And I will call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022 a second time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Director McNabb isn't here, and he was the previous chair. I'm just wondering if he had given any notice that he would be interested.
So Director McNabb is in the room here. Did you want to respond?
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, great. I'll make a nomination for Director McNabb.
Director McNabb, do you accept the nomination?
Yeah, I guess so.
Great, thank you. And I will call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee a third time. Okay, there being no further nominations, I will. We do normally give each director 5 minutes to speak to. Oh, yes, Director Cote.
I would like to take my name down. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So we now have one nominator, Director McNabb. So there being no further nominations, I declare Director McNabb the chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022.
Point of order, don't we have to do that 3 times?
Yeah, we just did it 3 times.
We did?
Yeah, we did.
I wasn't counting.
Great. So Chairperson McNabb, would you like me to conduct vice chair for you? Great. Okay, so now I'll go through a similar process for vice chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022. So I'll call for nominations the first time for vice chair.
I would nominate Bob Beckett.
Director Beckett, do you accept the nomination? Oops.
I do, with a great deal more enthusiasm than when we were having the chair election. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'll call for nominations for vice chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee for 2022 a second time. And I will call for nominations a third time. Great. There being no further nominations, I declare Director Beckett as Vice Chair for 2022 of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee. Congratulations to you both.
So I'm just going to move up so that I got the screen in front of me there. So just give us a sec.
Great. So Director McNabb will assume the chair.
So good morning, everybody. And I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda. Somebody? Director Beckett, Director Wagner. And any thing that you'd like to add on that? And no additions. All in favor? And opposed, anybody? We're good. That's carried. And the minutes of the December 1st, 2021 meeting? Approval? Somebody? Director Cote and Director Beckett. Any errors or omissions in that? Seeing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. So our first delegation, I'd just like to remind that petitions and petitioners and delegations that we have a 10-minute maximum. If your presentation is going past that, then we need to stop and have the board approve the extension in time. And so we have Eric Krog, co-director, Applied Environmental Research Laboratories, Nick Davey, Research Associate, and Trevor McCulloch, Vancouver Island University, presenting on the findings from the Alberni Valley landfill gas monitoring. So put on your scientific hats and here we go. You're away, Eric.
I'm going to let Nick make this presentation. Nick, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sounds good. Will do.
Yeah.
All right. How's that? Can everybody? Oh, I'm going to just swap this. How does that look? Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay. All right. Yeah, so I guess I'll just start by introducing myself. So my name is Nick Davey. I'm here to talk to you today about the Alberni Valley Landfill Gas Monitoring Project. And this is basically a collaboration between the ACRD and Vancouver Island University. So I'm just going to jump right in. In terms of objectives, so some of the things in terms of an overview we're going to talk about today is just quickly air quality in general, project overview, what we've been up to essentially. I'll share some preliminary data, and then we'll chat a little bit about some next steps moving forward as we continue on with this project. So to start off with, just to get everybody on the same page, just a little bit about air quality in general. So there are a number of criteria air quality parameters. So things like particulate matter and nitrogen oxides and ozone. Those are used to calculate something called the air quality health index, which just tells you basically the health risk to the air that you're breathing. And it's on a scale of 1 to 10. Is it good or is it bad? There are other air quality parameters as well. So things like VOCs, so volatile organic compounds. I've listed a whole bunch of them here. And these are important because they can form particles, but they can also be malodorous. So they can be pretty smelly as well. So we care about those. But the one that we're really going to focus on today is the greenhouse gases. So we're going to talk about methane primarily. So we recognize in terms of greenhouse gases, we have CO2 is an important greenhouse gas, but methane is the one that we're going to talk about today because it has a very high global warming potential. So a number to sort of keep in the back of your head as we go through the rest of the talk is ambient levels of methane are about 2 parts per million. So that's just ambient across the globe. So we've been mapping greenhouse gases in the region before. So this is some data from way back in 2018. And this is where we kind of identified some hotspots. So essentially what we're looking at here is methane concentrations on a map on the left. And what you'll notice is there's some red dots, and then there's a whole bunch of sort of white dots throughout the rest of the community. And that's just telling us that there's some elevated concentrations of methane associated with these two sites. One of them is the AVLF, and the other one is the wastewater treatment plant. We can do the same thing for CO2 and a bunch of other parameters, but we're really just going to focus on methane today. So what were our project objectives are really to do sort of zoom in on the AVLF. So we've done the community, but we wanted to really do a fine scale spatial survey of the site at the AVLF. We wanted to look for things like seasonal variability. Does methane change over the course of the year, over the course of the day? We wanted to install some low-cost sensors to monitor for greenhouse gases and general air quality, because when we're not there monitoring with our vehicle, we want to know what's happening the rest of the time. And then other objectives are to calculate greenhouse gas emission inventories. So how much greenhouse gases are leaving the site per year, assist local and regional partners promoting clean air and climate action, a little bit of R&D in terms of identifying and apportioning sources. So where are the sources of these pollutants in the community, in what proportion? And then also promoting scholarly connections between the community and academia. In terms of people involved, so just a quick shout out to the ACRD team. So folks there, so Jenny and Paulo, and then the VIU team, myself, Eric, Trevor, Lily, and Keith. And so on our side, we have everybody from seasoned professors to undergraduate students as well. So those are the partners. The tools that we have at our disposal. So this is the mobile lab that we have, basically the Swiss Army knife of air quality measuring. It's got everything. So it can measure greenhouse gases, inorganic gases, nitrogen oxides, and ozone. It can measure particles and also volatile organic compounds. On top of all that, it runs on batteries, and it has a weather station and a GPS. So we can generate essentially these maps of geospatial distributions where you get your chemical concentration as a function of where you are. So a little bit about the project in terms of what we've been up to. So there's the dates. So we try to get there every month at least. So May, June, July, August. There's just some general sort of weather parameters, temperatures, and humidity. So everything from 23 to 24 degrees in August to 1 degree in January. We'll be out there again probably this week. This slide really just shows you that we've got lots of data. So 40 hours of sampling, measuring more than 30 parameters. And our spatial resolution is less than 10 meters. So we get a lot of data over the space of the site. And now a little bit more specifically, so some methane data. So this is from a handheld portable methane detector. So what we've learned essentially is that in general, the concentrations of methane are low, somewhere between 2 and 4 parts per million in general, which is just barely above ambient. But what's interesting is that we have a few sites where we have elevated concentrations. And so we've circled these in sort of red, where we have a couple of areas where we've noticed, concentrations between 10 and 500. And they just tend to be in these little seats right near the ground. Aside from that, it's also important to note that we do have on this site, there are some monitoring wells. And so these are very small point sources. There's I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these wells, I guess. And these wells have relatively higher concentrations of methane, which is sort of expected because they are sort of vent to the atmosphere. These are average concentrations presented here, so everything between sort of 1,000 and 100,000 ppm. So those are just coming out of these monitoring wells. So aside from walking around with either the sensors or the van, we have some low-cost sensors that we've installed. This is the AirSense sensors that we have on site. These are the ones when we can't be there with our van or our sensors. These ones run 24/7. So the beauty of these instruments is that they run all day, every day. They do a bunch of different analytes, so PM, nitrogen oxides, ozone, and VOCs. What I've shown you here down below is just the last 1 month of data for ozone. And so what's really nice about this is that it really allows you to start to see patterns in the data. And then once we've collected for a longer period of time, we can really do some really strong statistics on looking for our seasonal differences. So that's the air sense units. We're putting in a couple of other units as well in the next month or so. One of them can do methane. So this is a LuxMux smart pole. This thing again, weather station and a methane sensor, and it's going to sit there on the site 24 hours a day. And it shares data through cell networks, and so we can monitor that one from our desks 24 hours a day. So that's going to have a pretty good coverage. We're also going to have these purple airs, which are particle sensors. Those are going to go on site as well. And so the last piece to talk about is volatile organic compounds. So we do have a mass spectrometer in the vehicle, and this is the one that measures these volatile organics. The message here is that we can measure a lot of different volatile organic compounds, aldehydes, alcohols, terpenes, and things like that. Their concentration is very low. And so that's important to note, but also they're primarily associated with the open phase. So this is where they're actively building out the landfill. That's basically where we see VOCs, nowhere else really on site. So just a quick sort of summary of where we're at right now with phase 1. We're in the data analysis and GIS site mapping sort of stage. So we're really starting to work up the data. We have a couple of more low-cost sensors to install on site in the next week or two, hopefully. And then we're going to work on this VOC data analysis and fingerprinting so that we can really get a fingerprint for the chemical constituents of the air at the landfill. And then at the end of the day, as a result, I think this is going to be probably one of the most sensor dense landfills in BC, at least. So I think that's something that we should be proud of. And then, yeah, moving forward, so project phase 2 really is now work with our community partners to install some units out in the community. So now once we've studied the landfill site in detail, now we're going to take our sensors and the mobile lab and do these surveys out in mapping the rest of the community to see if we can learn something about the air moving either around the community. So is the air from the landfill moving into the community at all or not? And so the planning stages there are to figure out some drive routes and figure out where we can put some stationary sensors out in the community, like at Alberni Elementary or some sort of industrial sites or a heavily trafficked area. So that's phase 2. And that's pretty much where we're at. With that, I think I'll acknowledge our sponsors. So BIU, Alberni Quayquat Regional District for funding, of course, BC and the Canada Foundation for Innovation for funding the mobile lab, of course, and then various other people with their sensors. So with that, I'll thank you for your time and open it up for any questions if there are any.
So thanks. Maybe we could get our screen back.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Since I can't see anybody.
Yeah, there we are.
There we go.
Better?
So this kind of looks like the figures that we basically got from the primary one that we did about 5 years ago, some very similar at least, and we had some ozone down on the bottom of Johnson Street, and particularly at this time of the year. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. The flare-offs that we've got that we just installed, I understand we just installed them, or we are installing them. How do you expect that to impact the methane levels?
Yeah, so well, I would expect so that one wellhead that has been replaced. I don't know if that I don't know if that is actually being flared yet, but the plan is to have it being flared. And so at least for that one wellhead, I imagine that will lower the methane levels because it's going to turn it all into CO2. So it's going to reduce it, but keep in mind that there are also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's still 7 other wellheads that you have to consider as well. So it's going to reduce it, but it's not going to make it go away.
So what about the impact on the carbon output?
Yeah, so in flaring it, you're just turning methane into CO2, right? So it's still carbon going into the atmosphere. It's just a less potent greenhouse gas. So in terms of global warming, CO2 is better than methane. So it's a step in the right direction, for sure.
Great. Well, that's my contribution to world science today. So if anybody else got questions there? Yeah, Director Brodner.
So once you have all this data in place up till now, because you're planning to put in more sensors and and whatnot, are you able to come to any conclusions yet about the levels of that are at the landfill?
So the conclusions at this point in time are that concentrations are variable, both in space and time and in season. But what we really need to do is, once we have collected all of the data over all of the seasons, is to then apply the statistics so that we can get a complete picture in terms of how they vary statistically over seasons. So we're about, I don't know, halfway there, right? So we're getting close. And then the other piece of data that we really want is to estimate a flux off of the landfill of methane per year by mass. But again, still more data streaming in. So we don't have that number just yet, but hopefully we'll have that by, soon.
Okay, and is it Port Alberni? Are there other landfills that are having the same study done in BC?
Not that I'm aware of. Eric, do you know? I don't think so. I think we're pretty censored up here in Port Alberni, so I don't think so.
Yeah, so I would say that, this issue of landfill gas emissions is common. So this is something that's well recognized at landfills generally, and bigger landfills have bigger problems. And there have been a variety of studies across the country and across the province and across the region, but none as intensive as this one, where we're really getting down at the on-site level to make those detailed measurements.
That's good to hear, because apparently the air quality in Port Alberni is the 3rd highest in BC. It's substantially high, I understand. So it's good.
Yeah, and that's in part driven by the topography or the geography, the fact that you've got in a steep valley there. Well, also the weather conditions, the meteorology. So that plus the traffic corridors and so on. But there's a lot going on, and the question you asked to Nick, it is a tricky question to put an exact number on any one air quality parameter, because there is so much variability. So that's really what we're working on.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had Paulo, but I see he may have taken his hand down. So did you want to say something, Paulo?
Hello, everyone. Just on wireless, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Just been Wi-Fi from Tim Hortons up north here, but yeah, I just want to say thanks to the team. They've done an amazing job out there, and I guess just a follow-up comment. Eric covered it off really well, but now we've got a year's worth of baseline data that we've started off on at the landfill. Now there'll be the need to continue that monitoring of the site there as the team expands out into the community and gets a sense of what's going on with the other sources, the rest of the community, industry areas, those kinds of things. That's kind of the focus, is sort of build, and I might be taking words away from Eric here, but build that profile of the valley, what that kind of looks like, where those impacts kind of come from. So yeah, that's all I have.
Great. Director Cote.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for the presentation. Always interested in what's happening out at the landfill. With the new organics diversion, will that have an effect on the data that you're collecting? And how will you take that into consideration? Thanks.
Nick, do you want to? I mean, I'm happy to comment on this. So certainly, landfill diversion of organics from the landfill will affect the production of methane. That's not expected to be an immediate effect because a lot of what we're looking at in terms of the methane seepage is from historic sources. So the older landfill materials. So we don't expect that to change overnight. But I will say that the point that we're on a live operating working facility does mean that there's a lot of things to consider here. We've got heavy vehicle operators on the site. We're opening up, there's new faces being opened, other areas being buried. So there's a lot that's quite dynamic. It will be tricky for us, I think, to see an immediate impact of that landfill diversion, but I do suspect that there's no doubt that they put less organic material in the landfill. If you're diverting it out of there, then there will be less carbon to eventually end up as methane.
Follow up, please.
Yeah.
So when we divert the organics, there'll be a new site then that is dealing with composting, and I'm just wondering, will we be monitoring that and what the effects of that will be? Thanks.
That's not in our current scope, but that's something we could talk about. As you know, composting facilities do have their own volatile organic compound footprint or odor profile. That is something we're working on with another group elsewhere on the island. And I think that that's worth considering, but we haven't had that conversation with ACRD.
Director Corbeil.
Thank you. I just want to pick your brain, Eric and Nick, for a second, and just following up on what Director Bodner said about our air quality. And I believe our bylaw in the city of Port Alberni talks about you can't burn wood that's wetter than 20% or something, which is near impossible for a bylaw officer to enforce. And I believe there are other communities that have bylaws that say on certain days, and it's something to do with the air inversion index or something, there's no burning at all. Could you comment on that? Because I mean, there's days that the smoke in this valley does not get out of the valley at all.
Yeah, Eric, you want to talk venting index? You go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So this is a big issue across the province. You're not unique. Prince George has some similar issues because of their geography. I also sit on a board in the Comox Valley, and they're dealing with some similar regulatory and bylaw related issues. The challenge, and they do use in some jurisdictions this venting index, which is a measure of the inversion. And there are prohibitions of both industrial slash burning as well as domestic backyard burning. Those are easy, relatively straightforward to work towards. The more challenging one is wood burning stoves, because some people rely on that for heat, and that has some other socioeconomic implications to it. So that can be a little bit trickier to deal with. But certainly there are other jurisdictions. I don't have specific bylaws on hand, but I could certainly point you in a direction to others who have been dealing with this in various ways. And for that, the primary concern is this fine particulate matter, and there are relatively good low-cost sensors for that. So those little purple air devices, the Alberni Air Quality Council has installed several of those around town, and we could really look at censoring that more fully and use, that data is coming in real time. So you could actually use that to make some of those decisions. The venting index is a large scale number. It doesn't deal specifically with, a venting index for Port Alberni, different from say Cameron Lake or Nanaimo. I think it's actually quite a large weather pattern that they're looking at there. So there may well be specific situations where you want to have something that's more local.
Thank you for that.
So one question I was just thinking about is the volume of methane that we're producing at the moment. Is it anywhere close to a productive level that you could actually utilize?
That's a question I'm not comfortable answering. I think that you really need an engineer to answer that. You're thinking about using it for energy production?
Sure, collecting it and utilizing it in some form.
Yeah, the Hartford landfill site out of Victoria does do that, and they generate some power for on-site use. But that's I really couldn't comment. I think there's a real upfront expense to that, so you'd have to make sure you were well. Yeah, so I think you needed some engineering input on that one.
No, my thoughts are that we're not in that sort of category that would make it economical, but it's just like, are the volumes there, or are they not there that would produce enough to be economically viable in the future, or I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I can't answer that.
Okay, I see Professor Jenny with her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just further to that, that was an excellent question. Right now, our estimated production of methane gas is quite low and well below the threshold that will require us to put in a gas collection system. And we are doing the diversion of organics in order to make sure that we don't increase to hit that level. The Alberni Valley landfill is a relatively small landfill. And as Eric was saying, really the larger landfills are the ones where it makes sense to, and you really have to put, you have to capture the methane, because right now, unless you cover it and try to, concentrate it into one area to then collect and then measure the volume, it's not a viable solution. So right now, our strategy has always been to divert organics and avoid going with a gas collection system. One of the benefits of this report, when we do get to the end of it, is that as the presenters were saying, we're going to get a better idea of how much gas is actually being produced. We've always been working on theoretical models, but this is real data collection, and it is pretty innovative. As they've said, in the province, there's not a lot of people doing this detailed data collection, so we'll get a lot more information, which I think will be incredibly valuable. The flare that we are going to be installing this year will address this one point, because again, it is better to reduce the methane to carbon dioxide because it has a significantly lower impact on greenhouse gas.
So is there any sense of how long it's going to take for this to gas off? Like when we stop putting organics in, and with the volumes that are currently there, is there any sense of how long that's going to take to significantly neutralize?
The theoretical models will do a 30 to 50 year model. And so you'll see the gas production sort of over time, it rises slowly to a peak point, and then it drops off, because it just takes that long when you're in an anaerobic situation for the organics to actually decompose and then finally produce gas, and then they slowly degrade over time. As an example, when we close our landfill, the first 30 years, there will be intensive monitoring, which slows down after 50. And I think we have a 200-year commitment before we would be done monitoring to make sure that there's no more impact in the environment. So it's slow.
Okay. Alrighty, anybody else? A really interesting topic. I mean, I find it super interesting. Talk about it for a long time, but we've got the report and we appreciate that, and we look forward to further reports as we move along. So thank you very much, folks. So next we have Mandy Ross, Bamfield WildSafe BC coordinator for BC, or WildSafe BC, regarding bear hazard assessment in Bamfield area. Huh, okay, there
Hi.
we go.
So how do I just have to figure out how to share the screen here. Sorry. How do I go? Sorry, how do I go into
If you just click on play from start.
from start? There we go. Thank you. Hi, my name is Mandy Ross, and I'm the Wildlife BC coordinator in Bamfield area. I was asked to come to present a little bit about the bear hazard assessment that we recently completed. I wanted to give you a bit of a background. Bamfield's been working towards becoming a bear smart community since 2017, and there are 6 different criteria that we need to meet in order to become a bear smart community, and a bear hazard assessment is one of them. So that part of it is now complete. What is a bear hazard assessment? It's a working report, or it's a report or working document which identifies key issues that influence current or potential human-bear conflict. So there are a number of different sources that we use for the data. Most communities rely heavily on information that comes from the conservation officers' reports. But unfortunately in Bamfield, people rarely call in when there are issues. So we have very little data to go on from the COS. But we relied on local interviews, a community bear interaction survey that we put out, and also 9 years of personal experience working in this capacity in Bamfield. There are 5 main components to the bear hazard assessment. There's the community bear interaction survey. There's the mapping of the bear travel corridors and high quality bear habitat. There's the mapping of permanent or semi-permanent non-natural attractants. And then we identified risk areas and then outlined the following steps, the next steps. So I'll just give you a bit of background on what we gleaned from each of those sections. So the community bear interaction survey, this is the first time we put out a standardized one. So it gave us an idea of people's perceptions around bears. 98% of people that took the survey said that they enjoy living in the community with bears, which is great because that makes my job a lot easier. It gave us an understanding of how people understand attractant management and where the issues might lie, where people need more education. And it also gave us an idea of where people thought there was human bear conflict and that we could help resolve. One of the examples of information that came out of it was asking people why they don't call the conservation officer services when there are issues. And many people said that they were afraid the bears would end up getting destroyed. So this is the kind of thing that allowed me to help focus my educational efforts. These are 2 maps of the bear travel corridors and seasonal feeding areas. So Bamfield on the left and Akla on the right. Red lines are the travel corridors. I mean, bears are everywhere in Bamfield, but these are sort of more heavily used. And also the seasonal grazing areas. So that gives us an idea of where you have a lot of bear activity and how it overlaps with human activity. These next 2 are the non-natural bear attractants that we mapped out. So each of those little icons are GPS coordinates where there are attractants identified. So you can see there are far fewer attractants in Anakla than there are in Bamfield. The one main issue that Anakla had is the garbage bins. Commercial and public garbage bins, and Bamfield had that issue as well. So many of those bins are either not bear resistant or they're bear resistant and broken, or people don't fully understand how to secure them. So that's one of the main issues with that. And in Bamfield, some of the other big issues were you can see the fish along the inside there, the orange fish along the shoreline. That's where people have cleaning stations and fish refuge just gets they're too close. The fish cleaning stations are too close to the shore, so the fish refuse ends up washing up on shore and causing a bear attractant. We also have a lot of fruit trees in Bamfield, so that was also another problem. Couple of the things that weren't included on the map for privacy issues were backyard chickens, composters, and outdoor freezers. So those are also big issues, but for privacy, I didn't put them on the map. So what we did then took the information that we gathered with the corridors and attractants and the history of interactions and developed risk areas. So there are 3 risk areas in Bamfield that we identified. The Marine Science Center, the campground, and the boardwalk. And a lot of that has to do with the type of usage as well. So you get a lot of children and families working in those areas as well. And in Pachina, or in Anakla, there was only one high risk area, which was the campground as well. So in terms of summaries and next steps, the big issue is dealing with attractant management, trying to identify how to deal with backyard chickens that don't have electric fencing around them, composts on people's properties. And a lot of people also compost and throw things in the intertidal, and it ends up getting washed back to shore, just like the fish refuse. Outdoor freezers, a huge problem this last year. Fish refuse and fruit trees. So we'll be focusing on education, promoting the cost share program, which helps subsidize people to purchase products that will help reduce conflict, like bear-proof composters or electric fencing, and also working on bylaws and enforcement to help address those. Solid waste management, we're working on this with Paulo, addressing the non-bear resistant bins and the broken bins, and user compliance. So this here, there's an example, a picture of what they use in Tofino there, demonstrating how to properly lock the bin. So having those on the bins will go a long way. Addressing overflowing bins. The West Side and Pachina both have a big issue of bins overflowing. So looking at the frequency of the removal and diversion of the waste from the waste stream, which could potentially help reduce the frequency required of how often you remove the garbage. And commercial vacation rentals and residential garbage is often improperly stored. In Bamfield, we don't have, the ACRD doesn't provide bins. So there's a lot of variety in what people at their homes use to store their garbage in, and a lot of it is not bear resistant. And permanent electric fencing around the transfer station, which is coming soon. So the hotspots being the campgrounds, there's a bear campsite program that WildSafe BC offers, and I've introduced it to both campgrounds. It's a comprehensive program which has step-by-step ways of introducing how to become a Bear Smart campground. So I've introduced it, and it's just going to take a little while for them to adopt it. Brady's Beach is another issue. There is a non-official campground. There's a lot of controversy over whether people want people camping there. So there is no information there to guide people. So that's another issue. There's definitely a need for more educational signs around town, and we got a grant for that, and I'm working on that. And we should be producing some shortly within the next month or so. And bylaws. It's really difficult to address any of these attractant management issues when there's no bylaws to support them. So now that the bear hazard assessment is complete, the next step is to do a human bear hazard management plan. So that requires developing a working group in Bamfield and Anakla, and taking the information that we got for the bear hazard assessment and applying that and coming up with a community-based solution to how to actually address the issues that we've identified. Then there's the In order to complete the Bear Smart criteria, we have to finish off the waste management system, which I feel like we're really close to putting a big fat red tick next to that. And then revising the decision-making documents and making Bear Smart bylaws that'll support them. So we're close, and I've had huge support from the community. It's been really encouraging, and Bamfield's changing so quickly. So this is perfect timing to try and develop really strong bylaws and strong infrastructure to support this. So, and thank you to the Alberni Clay Regional District for the funding. I wouldn't be doing this without you, and the British Columbia Conservation Foundation, and of course the province. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
I'll get rid of that.
I can see Bob's got his hand up, but I can't see Bob.
There.
Ah, there he is. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. I just wanted to a quick little story and then a comment. You know, last summer I got up early in the morning and I'm sitting on my front porch having a coffee, and this great big old black bear comes wandering down the road. And fortunately, my dog was inside the house, so didn't chase it off. But you know, the bear stopped, looked at me. We exchanged had a very short conversation. And then the bear just moseyed on down the road, and I thought, how wonderful. And then when I read Mandy's report and the survey of the community, where a large majority of folks actually enjoyed the interaction with the bears, just as I did that morning, and to be able to coexist is really a wonderful goal, I think. But I just wanted to thank Mandy for her report. I don't know, Mandy, if you were virtually attending the Bamfield Community Affairs meeting on Tuesday night, but I praised your work, your report, and encouraged the Community Affairs Society to reach out to you and have you attend a future meeting to present your work to our community. Invaluable, so professional. Thank you for your work on that.
Thanks, Bob.
Director Cote.
Thank you. Thank you for the report through the chair. It's really great to see that Bamfield's taking this step forward. I know that last year, Sprout Lake, there was quite a number, and in the valley, there was quite a number of bears that were destroyed because of interaction with residents. And I'd really like to continue on giving the community information on how to live with bears and how to secure their garbage and everything. It's great to hear stories like there was in the news recently about Hank the Tank, the big bear that could just blow through anything. I remember a trip to Cape Scott where there was a resident buddy bear that used to live there, right outside the cabin that's up there. Yeah, it's good to see people being able to live with bears in their communities. So thank you.
Director Botner.
Thank you, Mandy. That was great. And the chair, I wanted to ask about tourism. How much tourism do people pay attention to the education of bears around Bamfield and the use of the West Coast Trail?
Yeah, I mean, the West Coast Trail, I don't generally go up there because that's parks area, but we do overlap and we share a lot of information back and forth. But we've definitely seen a different type of tourist come into Bamfield. I think they're the less hardcore now. So we're seeing a lot of people that don't necessarily know how to be interacting with bears. And so I have to say, though, people are very open once they have the information. I mean, fear comes from not knowing, right? So it's really rewarding to to talk to people and then have them be able to move forward and not having that fear. Before we started this, I started doing this 9 years ago. And I remember there was no signs. And I remember bumping into tourists and they had no idea there were bears in Bamfield. And so now luckily we've got signs up and it's become, but to actually, the idea of moving through Bamfield and not even having a clue that there were bears around, I think that's rather a dangerous position to be in. So yeah, no, things have changed a lot, and people are really receptive. I've been really impressed by people. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear that people are paying attention, especially like with campgrounds and children and so vulnerable and pets and whatnot. So
yeah,
that's good that people are adhering to what you have to say.
Yeah, and I think if you provide people with the opportunity to secure their attractants, people are more, people want to be safe, right? So if you're giving people that opportunity, yeah, people, especially people with children and dogs, they tend to get on board.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And we've got Paulo.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to the rest of the committee. Just wanted to say thanks again, a huge shout out to all the work that Mandy's done with our group in my short time here so far. I think we moved things forward a fair bit as far as, at least from my lens, the pieces around, solid waste management in such a rural area, as well as, that awareness that you just spoke to, with the folks understanding the do's and don'ts when you're dealing with bears. I grew up on a farm, dealt with bears all the time. You learn to respect them, kind of thing. You learn to be careful what you put out there because they probably were going to come back if you weren't too careful, kind of thing. So just wanted to say thanks again, Mandy. Great work.
Thanks, Paula.
So a question I have is, what's the sort of overall effect of taking away their natural food, like fruit trees and so forth like that? I mean, bears are pretty habitual. And, if they've been going to the same pear tree for the last 35 years, what's going to happen when you take that away?
Well, so fruit trees aren't really considered a natural source of food. The problem with fruit trees that are near people's houses is it draws the bears in close to the house. And so it's fine at first. Bears are fine early on in the season, but once they reach that stage later on in the season when they're getting ready for hibernation and they have to pack on 20,000 calories a day, they become a different type of bear. They're no longer friendly and amenable. So we do discourage people from feeding them or allowing them in the apple tree. It's sort of considered a gateway drug, the fruit trees. It brings them in too close. But if there is a fruit tree, a pear tree that's a decent distance from your home, and it's not having that close interaction with people, then that's not such a big deal. But it's the ones that are close to home. And in Bamfield, we get the apples come at the same time that the fishermen are bringing in the fish in September. So it's like all the bears just come into town, and that's when they become food conditioned and habituated to people. So it's good to keep that distance, just so they don't become habituated to people. One of the things we're seeing in West Bamfield is a lot more sows and cubs, and the sow will go off and leave the cub in town for the next year. And so often these little bears get tolerated by people. They're cute and they're not a problem, and people watch them climb their trees. And they don't bug them early in the summer, but come September, October, they're getting bigger, they're hungry, and that's when the bad behavior starts, and that's when they can come. And we've seen a number of young bears have to get destroyed because of that. And I've been watching the progression, and you can see that because nobody really makes that connection in, June, July, and then, it's a different story in October. So yeah, it's good to avoid.
So the next time I go down to Bamfield, I'm going to rethink getting an ice cream cone or walking down that boardwalk. I did see the signs.
You did see the signs.
Yeah, so I was looking for bears, but I did have an ice cream cone, which probably wasn't a good idea. Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else? No? Okay, appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have a request for decisions. And the first one is the terms of reference for this committee. So I'll turn that over to Wendy.
Great, thank you. So in first meeting of every year, all regional district standing committees review and reconfirm their terms of reference for the year. So there's no changes to this unless the committee has any. So it's just presented for reconfirmation.
Okay, so we have a motion in front of us. Would somebody like to take a stab at that? Director Shannon.
Thanks. Would you like me to read it out?
Sure.
Or sure. Okay, I will move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee reconfirm their terms of reference for 2022 as presented.
And a seconder? Director Corbeil. Okay, any comment on that? All in favor? And opposed? Carried. Next, we have the presentation with regards to the three-stream waste services update. This ought to be interesting. So who's going to take care of that? Pardon me? Oh, Jody. I don't see Jody.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry. Just carry on.
There we go. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, okay. 1 second. There we go. All right. So thank you for having me here and allowing me to present on the overview of the recent consultation process for the Alberni Valley electoral areas regarding the proposed curbside waste collection service. So on December 1st of 2021, I was able to present the engagement plan for the electoral areas that focused on two main goals, which were to firstly inform electoral area communities about an opportunity for a coordinated three-stream waste collection service. The second goal of the engagement process was to consult with the public to gather data, gauge a level of interest, and determine what potential barriers exist for the proposed service. So engagement at a glance. So the engagement process was developed to better understand how residents in our electoral areas felt about an option for waste collection service at the curb. So as part of the process, various communication materials were developed and outreach activities were executed. The launch of our engagement process was promoted through a direct mailer. This focused on providing information to our electoral area residents of the Alberni Valley. And the direct mailer included an overview of the proposed three-stream service, so recycling, organics, and garbage, and what the estimated cost of the service would be. Information on what the public engagement process would be and how to access the survey and how residents could provide feedback. We also included links to informational resources such as the Let's Connect platform. This particular platform was expanded so that we could include electoral area specific information. And it also provided a forum for residents to ask questions and receive responses. Other mechanisms that we developed that were used to provide the targeted information were things like landfill handouts, media promotion, so radio ads and articles in the Alberni Valley News, as well as targeted social media. So the main purpose of the direct mailer, again, was to inform residents of the upcoming consultation opportunities as well. So we were able to host 3 in-person open house sessions. So these were held from January 25th to 27th in the evenings at the community centers within each electoral area. 1 noon hour online info session was held as well. And this opportunity helped draw the target audiences to the online survey or participate in the actual survey in person. So about over 100 residents attended the open house sessions. So each session we had about 35 to 40 participants, and 24 participants attended the online info session. So given our current situation with COVID and whatnot, that was a really great turnout. And thanks again to the directors who attended these sessions as well. So as far as engagement results, so the survey ran for approximately 20 days from January 10th to the 31st. We sent out approximately 3,483 direct mailers with that information I highlighted previously. We received 1,288 survey responses, and again, around 125 residents attended the sessions, both in person and online. So approximately 19 questions were submitted through the Let's Connect platform. And we received well over 100 emails to the Sort and Go email, as well as around 50 phone calls to the information line. The survey at a glance. So on December 10th, I provided the questions for the survey to the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee. So those questions were the survey, and they asked for feedback on how residents currently manage their waste. So waste practices for food waste, recycling, and garbage. The survey also allowed us to measure interest in the proposed service and ask residents what they would like directors to consider in the future for options for waste management. So in order to encourage as many residents as possible to respond, the survey was open and did not require registration in order to submit responses. Previous feedback for processes like this is having to register deters individuals from completing the survey. So that's why we didn't ask residents to register where they were coming from with postal codes and whatnot. Hard copies of the survey were also available at the ACRD office, and these were transferred to the final online survey results as well. So during the survey process, some residents expressed concerns regarding city residents or other residents completing the survey more than once, which there was a concern that this would affect the results. However, this issue was managed through quality control, and we monitored multiple entries. So we were able to track IP addresses, so multiple entries coming from the same IP address. So there was a total of about 44 submissions that were entered multiple times. This only equated to about 3.4% and was inconsequential when compared to the total results of the 1,288 total responses. So survey results. So as you can see here, as detailed in the report, the majority of the respondents are not supportive of a 3-stream collection service at this time. So if we break the responses into the respective communities, we look at Beaufort, 81 opposed to 19 in support, Sprout Lake, 84 opposed to 16 in support, Beaver Creek, 82 opposed with 18 in support, and Cherry Creek with a 68 response to oppose the service and 31% to support the service. So on average, it was about an 80-20 split. So barriers relating to the implementation of the proposed service included issues like concerns related to bears and wildlife, with the carts, long rural driveways, excuse me, rural road conditions, and various issues with cart sizes and mobility issues as well. Concerns about approximate costs and the potential job loss for private haulers were also reoccurring themes. Those in favor of the proposed service cited opportunities for increased convenience, value, and better environmental stewardship, such as air quality improvements as a result from decreased burning. So this feedback offered us information for the directors to consider as we all look forward to the next steps when we look at waste management in electoral areas. So based on the survey results and community feedback, staff does not recommend further work on the option to provide a roadside waste collection service to the electoral areas at this time. To meet our goal of 50% diversion, it's important that we are measuring the success of different programs and our overall systems by adjusting our work plans to continually move closer to our targets. Additionally, the 2021 landfill report will be brought to a future Alberni Valley Bamfield committee meeting. And this will include landfill information, data, waste audits, to show how we are still moving towards meeting our goals and targets. Moving forward, the ACRD will continue our commitment and efforts towards achieving waste diversion and waste generation targets. So by continuing to focus our efforts on education and incentivizing diversion through tipping rates and landfill bans such as organics going into the garbage stream. The solid waste management plan update is planned to begin following the completion of the regional organics diversion program. This is projected for 2023. And this will provide a future opportunity for us to engage with the community on options to increase diversion in the electoral areas, as well as address solutions to the barriers that were identified in the survey. So other options considered. So a referendum was proposed by a number of residents during the engagement process. Our response to this request was by explaining that prior to conducting a referendum, which is an expensive and very resource intensive process, this initial engagement process was designed to gauge the level of interest and determine if a service was likely to be supported. As our results show, the majority of the communities do not support the service. So it's not recommended that we proceed with this option, as it's likely that it will mirror the results of the engagement process that we just went through. Another option that was considered was to explore options to create a subscription-based waste collection service for electoral area residents who do want to take part in the three-stream collection service. So this could be done with a scenario that the ACRD issues expression of interest from businesses that might be interested in this service. And as ACRD staff work towards implementing the organics ban at the landfill, haulers will be required to enforce the removal of organics from the waste stream. This could create an opportunity for private haulers to offer separate collection as part of their service. However, this is not recommended at this time. So that concludes the high-level overview of the engagement results, and I can open it up to questions now, if there are any. Thank you.
So far, I have a beautiful blue screen.
Oh, I guess I have to stop sharing with you.
Ah, there we go. Director Cote.
Thank you. I still have a blue screen, but just a question around, thank you for this. It was a great exercise to engage the communities. I did hear a lot of responses. I'm still hearing responses as to what's happening. So we are having our Sprout Lake Community Association AGM on this coming Monday. So we'll be able to report out exactly what the survey results came up with and what the staff and directors are supporting as far as not going ahead with this. So really thank you for all of the work that you've put into this. It's been a great exercise. I still have questions about the cost of garbage. People still do not like the 2-bag minimum. With the comments coming from this exercise looking into the 3-stream waste service, I got a lot of comments still about what people want for garbage for self-haul. They do not like the 2-bag. They still want to do the 1 because they don't collect that much garbage. They're recycling, they're composting on their own properties. So the request is to go back to 1-bag minimum rather than 2. The cost could be $4 instead of $3, and an incentive would be $6 for 2. But I'm still hearing that. So, but really, thank you very much for this process. I think you did a great job, and thank you.
Thank you.
Director Bodner, second.
Thank you, and through the chair. That was really a lot of detail there, and it was quite easy to understand, and I'm sure it was a lot of work. However, what was the last comment that you made? Did you say that having those people who are wanted, you were not in favor of doing it? Those people who want could go ahead and do it privately?
That's an option that exists. So there was talk about a subscription base. So basically, residents that are interested in a collection service at the curb could sign up through a private hauler. However, right now that service does not exist through a private hauler. So it's an option we could explore, but we would have to see if there's, with the expression of interest, we would put that out there to see if there was a business available that could accommodate that service.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So there's a couple of takeaways from this program that I sort of come across. And one of them is that we really needed to have a better kind of blanket explanation prior to the survey going out of our intention and our objectives for the survey. I mean, I'm not sure how you do that. Hopefully our new communications person will be able to figure out that in the future, because it really seemed that our purpose and the understanding of our purpose were two completely different things. And that's what became problematic. I too am and have been from the start of this sympathetic and concerned about the people that actually, the 20% that want to have the service, and they want to have it for some very good reasons. They're unable to compost, or they're unable to get to the landfill or to a depot or whatever. And I think that we really need to focus on that solution, not particularly the problem so much, but the solution to that in the long term that we need to look at, and encouraging one of the local haulers to invest in a city-like collection truck with a 2-bin system, and down the line, see if we can facilitate that on a fee-for-service kind of thing, because I think it really will improve the success of the overall program. So it did get us what we want. I can absolutely, I'm confident that we have an evaluation that is actually much better than a referendum. It did give us more detail, and we understand the need and want, and that's really what we want to get to, referendum or no referendum. So anyhow, I appreciate, I know it was an absolute ton of work, and I absolutely appreciate what staff did. And every time we do this, we need to put a column on the side that says, what did we learn? What did we do? How can we do it different and learn more? So, Director Bodner.
Thank you. It's something I forgot to say. I think that there are other things that have to be taken into consideration for this, even if people really wanted to do this. Some people, especially out at Sprout Lake, and when it snows, it's not going to change. You don't know when it's going to snow. And if that's your garbage day and you can't get your garbage cans out there, that is the nature of the beast, it seems, out at Sprout Lake. And a lot of places out at Beaver Creek and Cherry Creek, too, is they're rural enough to where they have taken care of their compost. Plus, there's deep ditches sometimes right out on the road, and where you're going to be putting your garbage cans. So there are some things, I think those things that can't be changed is going to have to be worked around it. So I just wanted to pass that along. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was really surprised about on the actual survey was the interest expressed in Beaufort. I guess it must be the Cherry Creek end of Beaufort mostly, but that surprised me. Daniel.
Thank you. I just also wanted to thank staff for the work. It was a tremendous amount of work. I also wanted to acknowledge our elected officials as well, because sometimes people come with preconceptions to various outreach. And I do acknowledge that there was a number of people that thought it was a foregone conclusion and didn't recognize the fact that we were actually asking and engaging in dialogue, not trying to force a service or an answer upon people. To that end, I think it's important to flag that with good dialogue, it's a two-way process. And so it is the things we do as an organization, but it's also the things the community does. And with that, practice makes perfect. I think the more outreach and dialogue we do, the more we'll build up trust in the community that is exactly what we're doing. We're just engaging in dialogue. And over time, I think the process will be refined, and the overall community will benefit from a smoother process. But really appreciate the comments, and did want to tip my hat to Jenny and her team, Jody, that did a fantastic team on this, fantastic work on this.
Yeah, I really can support those opinions. The staff took a lot more flack than we did, and you might not think that's even possible, but they did. And so it's you really got to salute them for standing there and taking it, but in some cases it was totally unnecessary. Okay, well, yes, Director Shannon.
Thank you. I will echo everybody's comments by saying thank you to staff for this, especially Jody. I know this was a big one. And I mean, when we talk about getting interest or even talking about this, I recall when elections were happening in 2018 and you're talking to constituents as you're running for the position, I had people telling me back then, if you guys ever think of bringing services out here, I mean, like something like composting, like I have zero interest in it. So it's just interesting that it's kind of been around for a little bit, but now that we've actually done this, it's just really great to have that as an official process and have that data. And I really appreciate that. I do want to acknowledge Dr. McNabb's comment too about Beaufort with the 22 respondents out of 116 that said yes. I kind of have the same idea that it might have been the southern end of Beaufort. And I recall saying this at our meeting in December, November, that when we're doing this, I'd be really interested if, depending what the interest was, to see if we could divide Beaufort up, because it is more condensed and out down the end and a little bit more residential versus the bigger areas and farms and things like that. And then I just had a question, because I know Director Cote brings this up every time. If we're looking at diverting organics and we are working on, by 2024, banning it at the landfill and diverting it, and we're working towards that goal, if we've then diverted organics out of the garbage and then there is, again, less garbage to go in, and we're at that 2-bag or 1-bag limit, I mean, we keep talking about it, but would it not be appropriate then to make a motion to look into going back to 1 bag versus 2? I'm sure staff have some comments on this, but we hear it, hi Jenny, and we hear it so much. But I mean, if that's the goal and we're hearing it from constituents, then why don't we see what we can do about that?
Oh, sorry, I was reading this bar piece. Jenny, go ahead.
Through the chair. Yes, excellent comments from the directors. And so one of our next steps is that we're going to be doing a rate review, and we're going to look at an incentivized rate review. We have logistics to consider at the landfill, which is why we went to a 2-bag minimum. But now that we have clear direction that there is no interest in movement for a curbside collection program for the EAs, we need to really look at how do we deal with the self-haul? How do we incentivize diversion of recycling and organics and set rates appropriately while still ensuring that they're paying for the cost that it takes, because there is additional cost when we have individuals coming versus private haulers who come as one truck. It's like just less staff time, less, we don't have to have a lot of oversight. But that is on our work plan. We are going to do that. We also have the upgrades that we've done at the landfill since the last time we did the rate review. So we really get to do a real holistic review of the rates. And so we hope to get that to you, if not at the next AVB, by fall at the latest.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, just, I don't know, the demographic or something that with regards to this 2-bag thing, I have not heard one complaint with regards to the 2-bag. I don't know if Director Shannon or Director Bodner have, but you know, it really seems that Sprout Lake is somehow different, you know, just in the requirement or the level of maybe just because of the proximity to the landfill. You know, if they're going by it, they'll drop off 1 bag versus maybe somebody in Beaver Creek's a little further away and they collect 2 bags and go. So interesting. So Director Cote.
Thank you. It is partly because the landfill is in a close proximity. But I do continually hear that. It's strange, but you know, I know that Beaver Creek has some garbage pickup that's been ongoing for quite a while now. Yeah, I guess the farther you have to drive, the more you'd rather collect it. But when people are driving by it pretty much every day, it makes a difference. And they don't want to keep it because of conflict with bears or vermin or whatever. I just have a question for Jenny. When you're saying, I really look forward to this new report coming out, because you're talking about, you know, more people showing up or whatever. I don't understand the difference between me going to the grocery store every day and picking up a bag of groceries, or going, you know, every 3 days and picking up 2 bags of groceries. So I just kind of interested in how that will sort of transfer into garbage drop off and costs of employment. So thank you.
So one of the things that I was thinking about in this is as we go into the organics, the organics are not going to be in the garbage. So, you know, I know at my house, the garbage is pretty sterile. You know, you could keep the garbage at my house for a month because there's nothing else in it. It's all it is stuff that won't recycle, and there's no organics in it, and it's not stinking. It's just things that I can't put in any form of recycling, and so typically for us, we've got a very small kitchen bag every 2 weeks, and that's things like coffee pods, which at the moment you can't recycle. You know, maybe Kleenexes. You know, there's a really garbage bag sits in that garbage container in the kitchen for a while before we finally, you know, get it to a level where we want to put a new bag in it. But there's taking the organics out of it really changes the picture. And so it's going to be a thought process whether or not, because of that, you want to go down to one bag, because one bag, a garbage bag, like a full garbage bag for a 3-person family is probably going to take you 3 weeks to fill in the future when you get all of the organics out of it, the pizza boxes, all of that stuff, that can go in organics. So I'm glad we got really smart people doing this, because it's going to take a little bit of thinking to figure out what that direction is in the future. So anybody else got something? Thank you so much for all of this, Jenny and the team. It was necessary. We had to get the answers. We've got the answers. We can move forward with solutions, long-term solutions, and just let's focus on that, the solution. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much. And somebody would move the receipt of the report, please. Director Cote, Director Shannon. All in favor? Anybody opposed or no one to receive the report? No, we're good. On to the next thing. Was there?
Yes.
Sorry, 3 streams. Oh, okay. I thought the report did that, but I guess we have to do that. Okay, somebody want to move the motion that we've got in front of us with regards to this? Director Cote, and that motion is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee recommend the ACRD Board of Directors not proceed with roadside collection program for the Alberni Valley electoral areas at this time, and update the 2022-2026 financial plan to remove this project from the budget. Okay.
So moved.
I like that. Money saved. Okay. Did you have a comment there, Director Shannon?
Yeah, thank you. My question is to part of the motion there where it's being removed from the budget. Do we have that number in front of us? How much is being removed? Because I couldn't find it.
Terry, are you listening? I think I smell the pen burning on the paper in our office, but.
Director McNabb, I can speak to that. I think we had $1.2 million allocated for 2023, so we'll be reducing that. I have to check and see. We're still going to leave some money up because we obviously still need to hit our diversion targets, but it was the purchase of the carts, which I don't have that exact number, but it might be in the range of 900,000. So, but it's an adjustment to the capital reserve regardless. So because it comes out of the capital and it's how much we contribute to the capital, you won't see it as an impact on the operating budget, and it was for 2023, but we'll be adjusting that number and it'll just leave that money in the capital reserve for other landfill upgrade projects and other initiatives.
Okay, thanks. We have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Great. Now we can move on to the next thing, which is VIU landfill monitoring program. Has Paulo taken care of this?
Paula was taking care of this. Thank you, Chair. Through you to the rest of the group, this is a follow-up to the VIU team's presentation we just heard not too long ago here. So as we heard, they've completed the first year of analytics around the landfill, looking to expand out into the community. And so with that, there's two pieces. They're pursuing grants to work on the expansion out into the surrounding community, look at point sources for methane monitoring and looking for VOCs, particulates, establishing those data footprints that we've been looking for. With that going on, we've also budgeted approximately $20,000 for the next phase of the project at the landfill, which is to in place the permanent sensors on the landfill site and continue data analytics and reporting out for this year of 2022. So that's what you're seeing before you right now. And as an aside, we talked a little bit and I'm blanking on where the question came from, but there was a discussion on diverting organics from the landfill over to a compost facility. What does that look like as far as emissions are concerned around methane? And it's interesting to note that if you have organic material, as we currently do right now inside the landfill, it is breaking down in an anaerobic way. And when it does that, it creates those methane producing microbes. With a compost facility such as what Earthland SC is operating right now, their process is actually aerobic. They're driving air into the system, which means the the microbes that do produce methane don't show up. So actually a compost process like what Earthland SC is doing does not create methane itself. What we see inside the landfill in the absence of oxygen does. So that's just a little bit of an aside on the VIU team. Again, the idea is to proceed forward with the work they've already built to date, and we're looking for a recommendation to the board to continue that process for another year. And I'll open up for questions.
Okay. Where's the scientists out there? There she is. Director Cote.
Sorry. I'm just wondering how we'll be able to use this information going forward. Or is it just going to sit on a shelf? Thanks.
No, thank you, Director. That's an excellent question. And that's something I always worry about if you're collecting that kind of information. What use is it good for? Well, the piece is, the one variable is to see what the landfill is producing with the organics that are in place. Now, we've introduced two variables that are going to change over this next year. One, we slowly close the valve on the amount of organics that are physically going into the landfill in pursuit of that diversion target that we're looking at to get to 50% diversion. And so less of that material that breaks down the landfill will be showing up and generating methane. So we should see an effect on where we're seeing methane seeps within the landfill itself. The other thing that's going to change is the installation of the landfill gas flare. We do know that the organic material that's already in the landfill that is breaking down, that generates methane, does show up in methane emissions at certain seep points that the VIU team identified. And so we're installing a landfill gas flare system to break that material down and eliminate methane from going into the atmosphere. The act of those two things are going to show us how we're improving on the landfill, how our methane emissions are tracking over time, and if we're doing the right things. It'll also show us, if we run into any, it's just a measure of how we ensure that that landfill is continuously built and continuously sealed in its cells. So hopefully that helps.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just concerned that from listening to what the presentation from the VIU team said was that don't expect anything to happen right away, that it goes out over time. So I'm wondering if we should be continuing with this right now, or if we should postpone it, say for a year, and then see what the difference is over time, rather than, I think it might be a little too soon to be monitoring for things that are just beginning. So just concerns about that.
Thank you, Director. I'll ask Jenny to take that one as I just saw it pop up.
Thank you. Through the chair, excellent point. We do want to continue to monitor this to look at how the organics affect the landfill gas. But I think it's really important that we do monitor the landfill gas. We have a lot of responsibility for the landfill for the leachate monitoring as well as the environmental gas monitoring. And this is one of the ways that we're actually able to achieve that. Other landfills do things differently. Like we tried actually doing our own handheld analysis of gas. We weren't very successful. This was an amazing partnership opportunity with VIU, and they've raised a lot of funds, and they're bringing a lot to the table as well to give us this very detailed data. We're halfway through the project, and then we'll have the baseline. They're also engaging with some of our key community partners, like our neighbors at Sashot. And so once we've established all this baseline and we will have stationary sensors, that then gives us that long-term view to see how the reduction of organics drops that. But we still need to consider that the landfill is there and it has impacts on the community. And we really want to be progressive in monitoring that, having that information available so that we are demonstrating that we are managing the site correctly. So I strongly support and recommend that we continue the program for those reasons.
So I think my science teachers can tell you that I wasn't this interested in science in school, but I'm wondering what the effects on the leachate the organics are having, sort of on a long-term basis, so that the density of them and the overall damaging.
So I can speak to that a bit as well. Similarly, it is the organics that can create many constituents, not just in the air, but also in the water. And so we will see that. But right now we try to collect all of the leachate. We keep it on site, and we're pulling that all into through our pumps to sort of create a negative situation. So all of the water flows in and then we send it for treatment. So that is the intent of how the landfill is operated. Now, as we remove organics, the concentration of leachate for certain concentration constituents will reduce. So then it will be more diluted leachate that will be going to the lagoon. So, but we still have the volume that still has to get treated. So it's a benefit, but we have to treat it regardless.
Excellent. Well, we don't want to talk about it all day, but that was fun. So anybody else got a question? Okay, so we have a motion in front of us. Would somebody like to move that? Somebody? Director Shannon and Director Bodner. So the motion is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors extend the VIU landfill gas monitoring program for 2022. And that's staff's recommendation. So any further on that, Director Cote?
And that's for 50% of the cost at $20,000.
Through you, sorry, through you, Chair, to Director Cote's question, 20% would be our contribution. VIU would be collecting similar amount through grants to do the neighborhood monitoring. That's how that would work. So the total cost between us and them combined would be 40,000. We would just be putting in the 20,000 for our stuff.
Thank you.
Sounds like a deal. Any other questions? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. Alrighty. Update on Bamfield free tipping pilot program. Paulo, man, you're the man on the scene here. Go ahead.
No, sir, it's crazy. Thank you. So again, to the group, this is extension regarding the program that was started a couple of years ago. for the folks in Bamfield. And what this was, I'm sure the folks here know better than I do, but the folks approved the setup of a Bamfield free tipping fee pilot program. And what that was the ability to have residents, folks come from the community of Bamfield, bring in heavy loads of bulky waste material to the Alberni Valley landfill. It was to aid with any sort of diversion issues they might have had, because there really isn't an option for those large bucket materials to be disposed of in Bamfield. So as you can see, Brenda's compiled some great data here for us over the last 3 years. Overall, the key takeaways is in each year, approximately 5 non-transferable tipping fee vouchers were issued at 1,125 total, so 1,125 vouchers total in a year for folks to use this option to bring in their material, put in their voucher, they're able to tip for free. It was a very, very low uptake, as you could see. We only had about 15 in 2019, and it dropped off in 2020. However, out of the total amount, it over doubled in 2021. Not a lot of numbers there, but still, folks seem to have shown a renewed interest in utilizing the program. So to that end, let me just flip my page here. If you take a look on the data on the next page, you'll see where a lot of the material, usually the construction demo material, the gypsum and drywall that we brought in, we have the ability to divert all of that material. Folks are able to bring that material through this voucher program. So while it is small, it seems to be that there is definitely renewed interest to gain. So to that end, we're recommending that we actually extend this program for another 2 years, monitor, see if that trend still continues to go up, and it still allows for that waste diversion option for the folks from Bamfield. That's about all I've got on that side, but if there are any questions, please let me know.
So I have Director Bodner, Director Becker.
Thank you. A question and a comment. Why are they having free tipping fees from Bamfield? Two, the comment I want to make is, now that the road is going into Bamfield, there's probably going to be much more building and people living there. So that's going to be a lot of free garbage coming out of Bamfield. So I just wonder why.
It isn't actually free. Bamfield pays $60,000 towards waste management. And if you look at your contribution from Cherry Creek, it's substantially less than that. So that's why it's kind of that formula is available. Somebody else wanted to answer that, Jenny or Bob?
Yeah, certainly staff could do an excellent job in answering that, but there were changes to the depot in Bamfield, and the changes resulted in smaller bins being installed to make it easier for the contractor to remove items. That created some challenges for larger items, such as a sofa or construction materials. So, we were concerned that we were going to have illegal dumping if we didn't provide some alternative means of disposing those items as a result of those infrastructure changes at the depot. But perhaps we could ask Jenny or Paulo to speak to that further.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Through the chair, that's correct. And so although it's free to bring garbage from Bamfield to the Port Alberni landfill, if you're in Bamfield, it costs you a lot of money to haul waste. So most people want to take it to the transfer station. There's small 6-yard bins there. They have bulky items that won't fit in there. Sometimes people will just leave it in front. We have no way of getting that out of Bamfield now because we have a front tip load, or they will be tossing it in the woods, which is even worse. So this idea was to incentivize people to basically absorb the transportation costs that we would normally be doing for them by hauling it directly themselves. we've had some uptake, and it actually is growing surprisingly. So yeah, that's why we're looking to extend it for a couple of years. In theory, we might be saving money by waiving tipping fees for Bamfield residents.
Okay.
To understand it.
Dr. Cote?
Thank you. Through the chair to the board, I support this. I think it's a great incentive. As I understand through the report, it was only approximately $1,150 worth of tipping fees. So I, in comparison to trying to haul that to the landfill in the valley, I think that we have a saving there. I'd like to see what that is, or it'll be minimal cost anyways for trying to transfer that garbage to our landfill. I really appreciate people doing this self-haul and not dumping it out into the woods or trying to get the regional district to deal with it. So I totally support this. Thanks.
Director Shannon.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you to Director Beckett for explaining kind of how it's working in Bamfield. That helps with things. I have a question about the tipping fees. Is this also like covering if they bring mattresses and stuff, where normally we'd be paying an extra $20 to recycle a mattress, and the diversion that's going on at the landfill? I mean, it's great to see that there's more people partaking in this. My question is 30 vouchers out of 1,125 is still quite the small amount. But I'm happy to do it for another 2 years to see what other uptick that we get out of it, and see if we see that trend growing, especially with improvements to the road. And then I guess my question would be, when this is reassessed, to see, I mean, we'll have to see what population growth and everything is in Bamfield at that time, as we're kind of expecting that to happen with improvements to the road. And I mean, Dr. Beckett might have more on that, but that's kind of jumping ahead until we see what actually happens. Thanks.
So I've got Paulo and Bob. Do you want Paulo to go first, Bob? Yeah, Paulo, go ahead.
Thank you, directors. Yeah, no, just to comment on Director Shannon's questions there. Both are accurate. The tipping fees also include the offset costs for processing things like those mattresses. That's what we added in. That's why the tipping fees were built the way they are. So that's what we based it on. And yes, you're absolutely right. The idea would be to reassess what that looks like. You know, Bamfield 2.0, if you will, in a couple of years, the way that development looks, the way the road improvement looks. That's when we'd be looking at that again and bringing it back to the committee. And sorry, Director Beckett, I hope I didn't steal any thunder.
You want to go ahead, Bob?
Thanks very much. Just a couple comments. I agree with, before I move the motion, I agree with Director Cote. It would be interesting to see what the actual savings are to the ACRD and Bamfield with respect to this initiative. Secondly, to Director Shannon, I think that a lot of folks aren't using the free tipping with large items because, and my family refers to the depot as the mall. We go to the mall to see if there's any good items that we can use. So folks that are getting rid of furniture often will post on Facebook that, hey, I've got a dresser that I've taken to the mall. If you're interested, you know, stop by and pick it up. So with that good information, I would like to pass on, or pass the motion, move the motion, hopefully it's passed, that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee make a recommendation to the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors to extend the Bamfield free tipping fee pilot program for another 2 years.
The seconder, Director Shannon. And so any other questions on this? All in favor? Carried. On to the next thing, Alberni Valley Landfill rename. I just come up with another one, Rethink Waste Center. I've been giving these to Jenny, so she's been thrown in the waste basket. Okay, so Jenny, you want to go ahead with this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If nothing else, this is the punniest thing we do in solid waste. So this was referred from the board when we had suggested doing a rename of the landfill, because again, the landfill is not a place where we're just putting garbage in the ground anymore. And we really want to change the name to represent that. The board referred this to the committee to look at doing a public community-based contest. And so what we're proposing is just that. And we're asking the committee to support us going out to basically enlist names from the community. We will come back with a short list. And the AVB Services Committee directors will basically reduce that short list. And then we will go back to the community to vote on the final name for the landfill. We're going to use this as an opportunity to basically promote the fact that you can go to the landfill and how much diversion we're doing, and really promoting that as a diversion opportunity. So we see the community, I guess, contest being a great educational opportunity as well.
Okay, anybody on that? Director Shannon?
When I was reading this and we're doing more engagement, I just wonder if there's an opportunity when we go through this to kind of include the results or our discussions from the Sort and Go curbside survey that we just had, to kind of, because this will be going to the Valley, to kind of like as a thing, maybe a thank you for the engagement, for people partaking, spiciness or not, just to kind of follow it up a little bit and acknowledge that we got it. This is what we're working in, to include that in the education, and like as for part of how it will look because of where we're moving, kind of like a summary, I guess, of what we've discussed today.
Through the chair, we have a draft press release that is sitting and waiting to be issued following this meeting to really promote the information that we presented to the committee here, and talking about the fact that curbside, what the decision has been made by the committee and the results. So we will do that. And then, yes, every time we do any engagement, we get to answer all of the questions that come up again from the passionate folks who want to talk to us about that. So the Sort and Go hotline has been a real winner. So that's a number we're going to have to keep forever.
Okay, moving along. Any other questions? Would somebody like to move the motion, please? Then I'll jump at once. Director Beckett. And seconder, Director Shannon. And so the motion is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield committees endorse a community-based contest to be held to rename the Alberni landfill, and further that a letter be compiled and sent to School District 70 to encourage participation of Alberni Valley schools in this contest. Anything else on the motion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. We only have this much left to do. And I don't expect it to go like in a flash. So, Terry, are you on with all of this?
Yes, well, there's gonna be a few of us presenting, but I can start with the first one, which is the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility proposed service, if you like. So again, kind of what we did yesterday at the committee of the whole, just taking these sub-regional services one by one, just to make sure that the directors have a chance to chat about them and ask any questions as we go. So the first one is the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility, which is the feasibility study. This was planned for 2021, but we just never got there due to resourcing challenges. So it is on the work plan for this year, and does not have any financial impact because we actually requisitioned the money in the prior year. Don't really have a whole lot more to report on it at this time, unless our CAO has a comment about the upcoming steps.
I don't have further comment. I provided some clarity, I think, to the Port Alberni Council who had questions at the time. I can repeat some of that if there are questions, but otherwise we intend on seeing an RFP moving out in March, and we'll start putting together the plan that'll come back to the board once we have that assembled.
Alrighty. So I like this one because it actually is minus $4 on my budget. So somebody like to move this motion, or is there other comments with regards to it? Is that a motion? Director Shannon? And the seconder? Director Bodner. Okay, so the motion we have on the table is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield committees recommend that the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility proposed service budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2022-2026 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Next.
Okay, I think Heather was going to speak to this one.
Thank you. So for the Alberni Valley Emergency Planning Service, which is a shared service between the rural electoral areas in the Alberni Valley and the city of Port Alberni. So the priorities for 2020 are highlighted in your package. One of the higher price items is the HRVA, so that's a hazard and risk vulnerability assessment that will be done in the Alberni Valley, which hasn't been done for about 10 years since we created the emergency plan back in 2014. It will be done in conjunction with the Bamfield electoral area and Long Beach electoral area. There's been about $40,000 budgeted for that project. It's really needed to be done to look at the impacts of climate change on our hazards that impact us. The HRVA will form the basis for the updates to our emergency plan. So with the Alberni Valley being conducted in 2022 with the other EAs following in the years after. Training is something that we're legally required to do, so there's funds in here for that. ESS is a big part of our program. We anticipate to be busy with that this year. And then there's some other parts of the program that we want to focus on, being education and public education engagement. And then if we are successful with the Fire Smart program grants, we will carry on with that project. So there is an increase in the funds allocated to this service, partially because of the projects outlined, but also partially because the Protective Services Coordinator position that started last year is now fully employed. And we've also allocated additional staff time towards finance staff because that was under allocated in previous years. And I would be happy to answer questions.
Okay, this is a little busier one. Anybody got any questions on that? Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate the breakdown and the priorities that have been identified. I'm just wondering, this is a lot to be taking on in 1 year. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we could put off until next year. Just because it looks like as far as project expenses at 341,000 plus and nothing for the following years, I'm wondering if we could spread it out over the next couple of, at least part of it to the next year. I'm really struggling with this year's budget and the increases. So looking at any way to defer, I'm not saying eliminate, but just to spread things out a little bit. Thanks.
Can I take that one, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So many of those project expenses are going to be fully funded grants if we actually get them. And so we won't be proceeding with those aspects of the projects if they don't proceed. So the second line down, number 103 conditional grants, has an offset of 309,735, which offsets those project costs. If you'd like us to take a look at and provide you some options and what the impacts of those options would be, we could bring back something to the March 9th Committee of the Whole for you to discuss, and then we can, Heather and I and the team can take a look at different options and present them for you if you like.
I would appreciate that. The tax requisition on this is over $97,000 increase over last year. So really trying to look at this budget and find any kind of passing it forward, shall we say,
Totally.
just for this year because of the spike. Thanks.
Right. I will just remind the directors that this is a growing service. Like, we've kind of upped our level of service in the last couple of years. And a lot of the impact that should have occurred last year financially did not occur because we had so much surplus from 2020. And that was just because 2020 was a year of really just reacting to COVID the whole year. And so all the training that had been budgeted in 2020 did not occur and became surplus for 2021. And we added the additional resource of the Protective Services Coordinator in 2021 without having much of a financial increase, if at all. Actually, I'm not sure we had any increase last year because we had the COVID restart money plus the surplus. I feel like it was fairly flat. So we do have a whole extra resource down there that is doing not only helping with the program, but also that ESS component, which has been more active than I think any of us would like as of late. So yeah, just keep that in mind, but we can definitely bring back an option for you. I think the quickest and easiest option would be to pull out that HRVA. However, that means we're also not updating the emergency plan, because that is a step that needs to occur in advance of that. So that would be the quickest one, but we can brainstorm some other ideas and bring that back to you on the 9th if you would like to pass that motion.
Director Shannon.
Thank you. A question on the hazard and risk vulnerability assessment and the update of the Alberni Valley emergency plan. Are we on a time limit with that? Is there a provincial mandate to have that done at a certain time that we're working under?
No, we're just required by legislation to have all of our plans updated. So it's not a timeline that we're under. It's just it's due.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Daniel.
If I can add to that as well, the HRVA is something that when we look at the work that's just been done in terms of flood levels, when we look at the last 12 months in terms of the realities of fires, house fires, but also wildfires and flooding and erratic weather causing a lot of disruption to day-to-day life. This is really the basis where we can start connecting with other communities within our region and also building up our plans appropriately. So it's one of those areas that I would say, you know, if we do choose to delay, we have to bear in mind that it's often more expensive to deal with the unknowns after they've occurred, as opposed to doing the planning in advance and the training in advance. So it's could be one of those hidden surprises where we delay, but then pay more after the fact.
Okay, so Director Cote, would you like to move deferral of this till we can get a little more clarity?
I would make that motion to defer till March 9th. Thank you.
Got a seconder? Director Bodner? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to defer this if your staff can find some economy in it. And anything else on that? All in favor? Oops, sorry, Director Shannon.
So sorry, I just have a quick question. I know I was going to say this afternoon, but we're in afternoon already. We're going to be talking in our electoral areas committee, but from my understanding, we still have some money that we haven't allocated from community works funding. Is there an opportunity to use any of that for emergency services or no? No.
Unfortunately,
okay.
The community works funds, besides extending it to fire halls this year, it does not look at emergency programs. So no, not an option. And we've been very successful with grants for like our training and our stocking, our EOC and ESS, but this again is not something that we ever see grant funding for. So we also didn't really think it was worth waiting to watch for one of those either.
Okay, so now on the motion, sorry, your arms are getting tired. On the motion, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. Next. Terry, the Alberni Valley Land Service Committee recommended the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Waste Management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll briefly speak to this. The solid waste group has been very successful in the last year. Obviously, we've done a lot of presentations about organics, and on the agenda, we've got an update on phase 1, which was very successful. We have a great work plan ahead. We're going to continue working on organics diversion. You've heard a lot about phase 3, and we'll be preparing for that for 2023. Improved recycling, improvements at the Bamfield transfer station. We're going to finish the updated design, operation, and closure plan. And we're working on more environmental monitoring and mitigation improvements, as well as installing the McCoy Lake pump station. That's an upgrade. So lots of work to get done. Luckily, we have no change in tax requisition for this service. And besides what's in this agenda package, we will have the one change from the recommendation earlier, which is to adjust the capital budget for 2023, where we had 1.2 million. We'll be reducing that, and that'll come back for the, I believe, the March 9th. So that'll be a March 4th, okay, meeting. Is there any questions on the Alberni Valley waste?
I was just going to add that the 2 motions from yesterday regarding the grant and aid will also make those adjustments. So for the funding for Bread of Life, as well as the makerspace. So there'll be 3 adjustments to this before we see it on the 9th, and we'll make sure we capture all of those, but no tax requisition impacts.
Okay, anybody got any questions on that? Director Cote.
Thank you. It's with regard to the closure portion of the budget, is there any way that we could start working on closing parts of the landfill over the next, say, 10 years or something, so that we'll be sort of on top of it rather than wait till the end of the life of the landfill and then close it? Thanks.
Through the chair, we were hoping to bring you the updated design, operation, and closure plan to a meeting probably at the next AVB, and that'll give you a lot of details on sort of what are the plans for the landfill. I know it's really exciting stuff. So with bated breath, we will give you all the details on how we're going to be doing that shortly.
Great. Anybody else? So there's a motion here. Somebody like to move it?
Make the motion.
A seconder?
Find it.
Director Shannon and Director Cote and Director Shannon. Okay, so the motion is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommended the wrong one. The Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommended the Alberni Valley Waste Management proposed budget as presented, included in the first reading of the 2022-2026 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan Blackout. So all of that. And all in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. All righty. The regional airport.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Avra Airport, we were lucky to receive $180,000 in provincial COVID money in 2021, and that has offset operating costs and resulted in a surplus in 2022. We're looking to build an equipment shelter to protect one of our key maintenance assets out there, as well as doing some OLS clearing and certifying our weather observation system. So the impact on taxation, mostly due to the grant, is that we're looking at a static tax requisition for this service for 2022. And we're going to continue to work on the initiatives that have been developed by the airport vision and strategy, and we're working with the committee on that. So working through some fun projects for improved signage and communication and internet access and some small projects. Any questions?
So Director Cote.
Thank you. Does this include the grand opening for the airport?
Very exciting grand opening, public open house, hopefully. We're looking to set up another AVR meeting mid-March, I'm thinking, so soon. And we're working with the committee, subcommittee on those events. So I don't have details, but yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
So I've got
I'd
a question with regards to the $400,000 expenditure for covering what? Like, what are we putting in there?
So that is actually a snowplow that Mark obtained a few years ago, and it's just been sitting out and getting weathered. And so we're losing the value of that asset. But the maintenance facility itself, the equipment shelter, we've received, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but we received funding, grant funding through BCAP for that, correct?
Okay.
No, not at the
Not that
AV.
one.
The one at the West Coast we did, but not for the AV. I do believe, Jenny, is there not another piece of equipment that he is hoping to purchase secondhand here during the year that would also be housed in this equipment shed as well?
Yeah, and we're also building a similar equipment shed at the Long Beach Airport. So we're looking to get some cost efficiencies by getting them both constructed this year, hopefully. And it really is just about maintaining the equipment that we're getting for a song, because we're not buying the equipment itself firsthand. So
I still worry about the logistics of spending $400,000 to protect $75,000 worth of equipment. I don't know how that works. So, Director Daniel?
It is over time the cumulative impacts of that as well. And you know, I can't speak directly to our airport, but I can speak to Welcome Beaches where similar efforts were made. It's with the UV, it's the tires that end up killing you over time, and particularly with heavy equipment or larger tires. And then with the airport, you can't run the same kind of blades. So usually you have a rubberized edge and whatnot. So anything rubber that's going to be exposed to UV ends up having a very short life as a result. And so even though the value of the equipment, the large equipment itself, may not be achieved with that covering right away, over time you're going to recover those costs.
Yeah, well, it's just the year it is that concerns me, and likely Director Cote as well. But so I'll leave that up to somebody else to beat up. Anybody else got any comments on this? Okay, we got a motion here. Anybody like to move it? Director Shannon? Or is that a comment?
And I also had a question. On page 62 for 2021, we had just over $7,000 worth of office operations expenses. I'm just wondering how we ended up with that now. We don't have any more office costs.
For sure. So we started implementing Questica in 2020. And so slowly the responsibility for these budgets has been pushed out to the budgeting managers. And so they've been coding things in different ways. So we've really gone through this year, especially with Jenny's team, and really allocated where they want these things to go. So that 7,000 will still exist. It's not a one-time cost. However, it's going to be lumped into that that operating cost. We've just kind of coded it slightly different to make it easier for tracking for them. So not really a reduction in cost, it's just a coding correction.
Okay, thank you.
So we've got a mover on that motion. We didn't get a seconder. Director Bodner. So the motion that we're dealing with is that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Alberni Valley Regional Airport proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of 2022 to 2026 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan. Wow. Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. I'm just wondering about quorum based on voting numbers. We've lost. There. Okay. Yeah, okay, so, alrighty, nobody else has, but you can't even go to the bathroom, you have to stay. Okay, so now we have the pretty easy one, the Alberni Valley regional water effort that
Definitely.
we put forward a while ago, so I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that or is it self-sufficient?
I would like to speak to that. I just want to say that I think that we, staff have been talking, like, we either need to figure out if we're proceeding fully down a feasibility study, or if we're actually just going to remove this for like until it's brought up again. So we'll do that work during 2022. We have new CAO here, new CAO at the city. We've got new engineering staff at the city here. So want to have a bit of a discussion before we actually kind of take this project off the books for now. So left it in here, zero tax requisition, nothing changed. There is a little bit of money if we decide to action something during the year. There's $6,000 that we can spend some staff time or spend some costs on it. But just kind of feeling like the purpose of these proposed services is that you're looking at a feasibility of something, and we've had it on the books for 5 years now. So we either need to say we're not doing it at this time or kind of finish it through the process. So we'll look at that in 2022 and address it in the 2023 budget.
Yeah, so the other thing that's kind of part of this is a look at what the city's capability is into the future, both for their own needs and for the accessory needs like us and the DSHAT and discussions with Cherry Creek. So we need to have that an answer in hand so that we know that if we've got to look for a different source or whatever. But on this motion, any other questions? Can I have a mover?
I'll move that the Alberni Valley Regional or Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Alberni Valley Regional Water Proposed Service Budget as presented and included in the first reading of the 2022 to 2026 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Finance Plan bylaw.
Seconder? Director Corbeil? Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. Next, we have the custom transit budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Terry probably wants to hop in on this one as well. But essentially, we had Safe Restart grant funding, which helped for during COVID on transit, and that's continuing to March 31st, 2022. That offset some of our passenger revenue loss in 2021. And we also had some realized savings from the budgeted use of shared operating reserves, BC Transit did a transition. So we're seeing the requisition actually drop from 2021 to 2022. So our base in 2021 was 198,000. It's going down to 173. And in 2023, we'll still be below 2021 levels because of the stabilization reserve. So we won't see it increasing until 2024.
Yes. Okay. Any questions on this one? Director Cote.
Thank you. So through the chair, I'd like to ask that BC Transit come and do a presentation to the board with what they saw through the service through COVID through the last year, how our service is being utilized now. Is it being utilized now? And yeah, numbers. I'd like to hear the numbers. They have presented in the past, and also we're, oh, this is custom, never mind. Thank you.
Terry.
I just wanted to add that I I didn't love having this requisition drop by 12% because it is going to rebound after COVID, but faced with all the other numbers we were facing in the services, I thought it was best. However, we did not allocate the use of the reserve fund that we set up last year. So we have about $74,000 sitting in a rate stabilization reserve that I have now allocated to be used in 2023, and we're just going to hold tight on that. But we did have the requisition drop to the 173 mark this year, which was a 12% drop. But it's going to bounce back to that 200 level, if not growing after that, moving forward. The one other switch that's been made by BC Transit province-wide is they used to budget, or they used to bill us based on budget and create these reserves in the background for our share. And that was what we're finished utilizing here in March. However, what they've done now is they've switched the whole province to be billed on actuals. So some years we may actually be above what they have budgeted, depending on whatever factors have arose in our service. But that was a province-wide switch. So better in some ways and riskier in others. So just a bit of a change of how they're doing things. And that's all for me.
Yeah, I personally am worried about the efficiency of this particular system and throughout COVID, and that it wasn't, our local system wasn't reactive enough. And so it caused a lot of costs that could have been avoided. At the moment, one of the notices I saw recently said that they had a very high level of participation, local customers, and that they were in fact rebounding in that particular way. But during COVID, I mean, we have active buses, custom transit buses that were totally not needed, and they weren't parked. So at least they weren't parked on our side of the table. And so it's, I don't know how we fend that off in the future, but it's certainly a thought. So anybody else? So we have a motion here. Somebody like to move it?
Make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the custom transit proposed budget as presented to be included in the first reading of the 2022-2026 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Seconder, Director Shannon. Okay, anything else on this? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. Now, last one, the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have, so 2022 is going to be the final year under our current agreement for the Transport Canada's Boating Safety Contribution Grant. We will look to apply again, but there's no guarantee, and that does provide 75% of the funding. So the result of that is that we see tax requisition almost the same, going from 37,000 to 37,222 for the service, and we are anticipating doing some patrol boat repairs and upgrades this year. So we budgeted for that.
So one of the questions I have is what if this grant is not restored for next year? Like, do we have a plan? Because I can't see if this budget, like from Beaver Creek, jumping up to full capacity and being equitable, sort of something that a director would really want to see on a balance sheet.
It's my understanding that we're going to be able to find out if we're eligible and successful for the grant by spring, summer. And so if we find out that we are not eligible, then staff are going to look at different options, reduce service, increase taxes. There's many ways we can address that. And we'll bring this back well ahead of time because, again, the service luckily doesn't start until late spring, summer. So we should be able to make some decisions and then approve changes if required for the financial plan for the 2023 year. But yeah, it's something we're considering might be possible, that we might have to look at changing the way we look at this service.
All righty, I expect Director Cody's got a motion sitting right there.
I would make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol proposed budget as presented to be included in the first reading of the 2022-2026 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Finance Plan bylaw.
All righty, seconder Director Corbeil. Any further questions on this? All righty, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. And I see Jody lining up in the background here on this next one's report to City of Port Alberni Sort and Go. So jump in, Jody.
All right, I'm going to try this again and hopefully share with you the right screen so you don't see my notes. Okay, are you seeing notes or slideshow?
Slideshow, you're good to go.
Perfect. All right, so thanks again for allowing me to present to you on the update of the Phase 1 City of Port Alberni implementation of the Sort and Go program. So this presentation will provide you with an update and highlights regarding the progress to date for the City of Port Alberni's Sort and Go program. So as you are most likely aware, in 2020, the ACRD received a $6 million grant that provided funding for the introduction of organics diversion for communities in the ACRD. Phase 1 was the City of Port Alberni, and this program was implemented September 13th, 2021. Service included approximately 6,700 households that were part of the initial rollout. This included all single-family households in dwellings of 3 units or less. Phase 2 of the program is the West Coast, so this is currently underway. We have begun engagement with the West Coast communities, and there is a compost facility which is in its final design phase, which will be constructed at the West Coast landfill. Collection for this phase, Phase 2, is projected for November 2022. And then Phase 3, which was Alberni Valley and Bamfield, which was included in my previous presentation. So the expanded waste service was an upgrade to the previous system, which was an automatic garbage collection system and manual recycling. The new standardized carts were provided to residents and included the 3 waste streams. So that was organics, recycling, and existing garbage carts. There have been significant environmental benefits to date with implementing the organics and recycling in the carts at the curb. This includes increased waste diversion, which I will discuss further in my later slides. It has already, or it has as well, demonstrated a reduction in waste disposed, garbage waste disposed at the landfill. In turn, helping us extend the life of the landfill, which was one of our main goals. Other benefits have been improving our neighborhood aesthetics by keeping materials, especially recycling, contained in the carts. And feedback from residents is that with the new organics collection, this has resulted in a reduction of trips to the landfill to drop off yard waste. Residents definitely took advantage of having the extra capacity for their fall yard waste. And we saw these increased volumes of organic material going to Earth, Land, and Sea for processing. So when we look at the current diversion, so some really great successes. Over 690 tons of organic waste have been diverted from the landfill, which is great. Increased diversion rate. So we were sitting at about 20. Our last audit showed that we were at 60%, which is fantastic. And so 51% of what's being diverted by volume is organics, and about 14% is recyclable material. Volumes by weight, so recycling volumes have increased from 12 to 15%, and garbage generation and disposal, or garbage disposal, sorry, has gone from 88% to 42%, which is also great to see. So to talk about engagement again, when we looked at phase 1, so the ACRD partnered with Zinc Communication Strategies, who helped us develop the engagement strategy, which focused on the 3 phases, so pre-implementation, implementation, and post-implementation. The strategy included various communication tools and program materials that were developed to support the changes to the waste services. So each phase of the strategy included promotional, educational, and outreach tools that really were focused on setting up residents for success with the introduction and use of the organics, as well as the cart system. So websites, videos, key messages, and frequently asked questions were developed, along with many other tools that really help support positive behavior change. So we are in the post-implementation stage, and our ongoing tactics, such as residential waste audits. This helps us determine composition, cart tagging. These practices help us continue and assist with identifying common contamination issues that are happening. They also help us provide diversion data that contribute to our ongoing educational campaigns that hopefully you've seen in the Alberni Valley news articles. And again, key findings from these tactics continue to be communicated to residents of the city of Port Alberni through social media, various news articles, radio ads, and other media outlets such as Facebook. Ongoing operations. So when we look at the automatic cart collection, so effective September 13th, which was our rollout date, the city of Port Alberni took over curbside recycling collection within city boundaries. A part of the transition with the 3-stream automatic waste collection, the city uses their pre-existing trucks, which are split compartments, and that basically means there's 2 compartments that separate the waste streams. So 2 streams can be collected at once, and this is being completed with organics being picked up weekly and recycling and garbage on a bi-weekly frequency. The city is now fully transitioned into the full 3-stream automatic cart collection and has been doing a fantastic job of providing service to the 6,700 single family households. So again, just want to send some kudos to the city of Port Alberni collection drivers. This was a big, significant change for them, and they've handled the change very, very well. The city of Port Alberni continues to make improvements operationally. However, there have been some challenges. So with regard to the collection fleet, so just with the additional waste streams, going from picking up just garbage to now the 3 streams, all three of the trucks are often being utilized. This includes the spare truck, and it's often used to help complete with the regular service. So the spare truck assists with offsetting the collection time and periods where there's an increase of material volume. Increase to truck maintenance has also been a bit of an operational adjustment, just due to the arm taking on more loads has obviously resulted in increased maintenance. So when we look at managing contamination from the organic stream, so the trucks were equipped with software that has helped the city of Port Alberni clerks and drivers identify and track property-specific contamination issues, as well as confirmed miscollection inquiries. The software has been working well, and it's been a helpful tool, again, that helps us with our educational component to the service. Earthline and Sea, the ACRD, the City of Port Alberni operations, and Earthline and Sea also meet on a monthly basis to discuss operational concerns and any contamination issues that Earthline and Sea might be seeing from once the loads are delivered there. So we meet on a monthly basis so that we can help form some education opportunities to help support alleviating those contamination issues. Earthline and Sea has also been working with community groups to assist with contamination removal, which is great. Education. So the ACRD's education coordinator has also played a very important role with regard to waste education and reduction. We continue to do ongoing information boosts where we can, and presentations to various community groups and schools. We are working with the school district with Family Literacy Week in the coming month in March. So that's a great opportunity for us to educate our residents as well. And our education coordinator also conducts the site visits every once in a while. So based on the software technology and the reports, if there's repeat offenders where, contamination has been identified more than once, then we do have the option of sending our education coordinator out to help alleviate some of the concerns with contamination. So these images here are also part of our cart tagging audits that we did in November, December. So we worked with the group INEO, who helped us with this process. So basically it's visual audits where we can take a peek in the bin, and if we notice any obvious contamination, these educational tags are placed on the cart just to help inform residents of potential contamination within their cart. If all things look good, they get awarded a good job sticker. So next steps, moving forward, the ACRD will continue to provide project management and communication support for the project with the intention of transitioning the ongoing operations solely to the City of Port Alberni in May 2022, I believe. As a key function of the ACRD, we will still continue to provide waste education services. And of course, we'll continue our collaboration with the City of Port Alberni staff. ACRD will also continue to provide consolidation and transport of recyclable material to the designated facilities in Parksville. And we will continue to monitor and report back on waste diversion rates, trends in contamination, and customer feedback. So that is the overview of phase one. Our Let's Connect page will remain active with current information for the City of Port Alberni program. So as always, we will have that info line for the Sort and Go, as well as the email, and then Let's Connect as well. Thank you.
Alrighty, so you can stop sharing.
Yep.
So living where I'm living and being the Energizer recycling bunny, a couple of things that have been problematic is one of them I'd like to see in the long term or shorter maybe term is expansion of the things that can actually go in the blue box container versus the stuff that has to go to the recycling depot. I think that would improve the amount of recycling that's actually collected, because a lot of people will just throw the other wrapping and the hard plastics into the garbage versus taking them to the depot. I understand that glass is just not something we can put in the truck, but I think there's opportunities there that maybe we can expand that. The other thing is that the notice online of your pickup isn't consistently prior to your pickup. We've had it the next day that telling us that it was going to be picked up yesterday and late in the day of the pickup. So if we're getting that, other people are getting that too. I mean, we don't go by that. We go by the calendar, but it can be that. And we have had one occasion where it wasn't picked up, period. And I phoned in and it was picked up the next day, no problem. So that worked well, but not quite sure why it didn't get picked up, but just somebody burped or something. So that's my comment. I don't know if anybody else has got anything. Ron, maybe?
No, other than it's working really well, and it's absolutely amazing how little garbage you put out and how much more organics and recycling that we've been doing. The one comment you hear over and over again is the size of the containers, and especially for the organics, they're great when you're putting clippings in, but oftentimes there's very little in them. As a matter of fact, a lot of people in my neighborhood don't put them out because they haven't got enough organics to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, we put ours in the freezer and just wait for the week, and we could even sometimes be 2 weeks. Just if there's enough room in the freezer. So yeah, that. In general, really good and really effective. And like everything, there's things that we can improve on, and we need to march towards that, I think. But so somebody like to move receipt of this report? Ron, seconder? Somebody, Diane? And thanks very much, Jody. I know it's been a ton of work. All in favor? Anybody opposed? There we go. That's question period. Anybody online?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one attendee online. So if the attendee has any questions or comments for the committee, you can put it in the Q&A now, and I can allow you to speak.
This Jody, I don't know if she's still there. No, she's gone. Oh, there you are. There's still a fair bit of confusion about particular items that can go in what stream, like as far as the other wrappings and plastic bags are something that there's a question mark on. So, I think there's a couple of things that need better definition within even the sort and go folder. So that you can do as much as you can and not get contamination.
So, was that a question or just a comment?
Well, just a comment. I think that there can be better explanation about exactly what goes where as far as the recycling part of it. You can recycle more than most people think you can.
Correct. And so we're really trying to promote that app with the Waste Wizard to really help inform people on what goes where. We're also developing additional material. So sorting guides, looking at different options that we can get that material to residents so that it's accessible, something that they can have a quick look at and see, which items go where. Things like, aluminum cans are things that people don't realize can go in the recycling as well. So there are a few items that we are looking at developing more material around just to help residents identify what goes in which bin or what goes to the depot.
Yeah, and I think that it needs to be a broad brush for the regional district as well as the municipality. We got anything?
Nothing, no.
Okay, alrighty. So I would move that we a motion to close the meeting to the public as per community charter section 9 0.2B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to the negotiation between the regional district and the provincial government or federal government or both, or between the provincial government or federal government or both and the third party. So we'll look for the meeting to be closed and need a seconder for that. And all in favor? Anybody opposed? Was carried.